Welcome back, guys. So this is, hopefully that will be out of the way. Okay, so this is our review for Mastery Test 5. I'm going to go over it just like I would in class, go over what each skill is asking of you, and then I want you to pause the video and then try all of it, then play the video back and you can check your answers and hear me go over most of the problems, okay? So at the beginning of this, right here for skill 1, you're telling me for each of these, was the probability found through the experimental method or the classical method? And you're telling me how you know. So remember, if it was experimental, that means someone actually did the experiment. They actually gathered the data by doing trials. It might not have been formal. It might have just been someone doing it once or twice. It might have been lots of people and then we aggregated the data, but it has to actually have happened. If it doesn't state that it actually happened and they're just basing it on math, then it is classical. Okay, so for the explain how you know, if it's experimental, you can tell me because it actually happened and they actually did it. If it's classical, they based it just on the math. All right, now down here, technically there are 3 skills in one down here. So one of the skills, I'm just giving you a grade on, did you pick the right rule? Did you know if you were adding, subtracting, or multiplying? And then the other 2, addition and subtraction rules, those are going to be 1 grade, and multiplication rule is a 2nd grade. So here are the rules you got to remember. If it says or, that means you're adding your probabilities. If it says and then, that means you're multiplying. When you add fractions, they have to have a common denominator and you don't add the denominator. So for instance, if we had a fraction like 1/6 and we were adding it to 1/6, we add our numerators and get 2. Our denominator stays 6, and that can simplify down to 1/3. If, however, I was multiplying those two, 1 times 1 gives me 1. 6 times 6 gives me 36. Okay? All right, let me get this out of the way. And other things to remember real quick. With replacement means you put back anything you took out. Without replacement means you do not. And you can write your probabilities as fractions, percents, or decimals, okay? If you write it as a fraction, it should be in the simplest form. So often it's easiest just to convert that into a percent. All right. So if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and pause and try the front side. If you already have, great. Here are the answers to the front. So for skill 1, the first 2 are experimental. And the first one, you'll notice that it says Angelo actually rolled the dice 20 times. So it has to be experimental. And in the second one, this is based on actual data, meaning these people were actually pulled over. So it has to be experimental. The third one doesn't say anything about an experiment. It's just giving us the probability based on math, therefore it has to be classical. All right, on this section down here, notice that I tried to always simplify. So it said or, the chance of rolling a 2 is 1 out of 6 because there's 1, 2. Or means add, the chance of rolling a 3 is 1 out of 6. You only add the numerators, so you have 2 out of 6. And to simplify, we divided each of these by 2, and we end up with 1/3. Down here, we're thinking about a bag of marbles. So the chance of getting a purple is 1 out of 12, and meant we multiplied. The chance of getting yellow is 6 out of 12. It says with replacement, so my denominator did not change. It stayed at 12. Any marbles I picked out, I put back in. This time we multiply the numerator and the denominator. So notice I get 144. That simplifies if you divide by 2 into 3 over 72, but you can simplify again if you divide by 3 and you get 1/24. or you could have just written it as 4.2%. If there's a 37% chance it will rain, the chance that it won't is 100%. Take away your 37%. Over here with the spinner, I tried to color code this one because it ended up being a little confusing. The chance of getting a 3 happens to be 2 out of 8 because there are 2 3s. But the chance of getting a 2 happens to be 3 out of 8 because there are 3 2s. So 5 out of 8 is simplified. You can't do anything more with that. On the bottom, same spinner, same colors. The only difference was we were also looking at the chance of spinning a 1. There were 3 1s, so we multiply across the top. 2 times 3 times 3 gives us 12. Across the bottom, 8 times 8 times 8 gives us 512. I didn't want to simplify, so I just made it into a percent. And then finally, this one you should know off the top of your head. The chance of flipping heads is 50%, or 1 out of 2. Now, if you flip it over to the back, or zoom down, however you're looking at this, this skill is about being able to read a two-way or a contingency table. So this table was created in 2008, and it asked people before they voted how important they felt controlling illegal immigration was. And they gave them a scale of 1, very important, to 3, not at all important. And they also asked those people which part of the U.S. they lived in, the Northeast, the Midwest, the South, or the West. So for each of these, remember, you're writing it as a percent. That part's key. And show your work. You're still using the same rules, or means you need to add. From the Northeast means you're only looking at people from the Northeast. You're not going to end up using that total, okay? And your very last skill down here is something we've been kind of working on all along, and that's comparing probabilities. So determining what is more likely. So for each of these boxes, this one and this one, I want you to determine the probability of each event and then tell me which is more likely. So if you say event A is more likely, I need to see what the probability is and then how you're comparing it to the probability of event B. All right, same rules apply, and then still means multiply. Without replacement still means you're not putting it back in. All right, guys, good luck. Pause the video now, and then I want you to come back and check your answers. All right, so hopefully you paused and you tried these. So here's what we got for some answers. On this first one, I color-coded it for us. The probability that someone is from the Midwest is the yellow part, and or that they said controlling illegal immigration is very important. That's the red part. So our or still means we're going to add, just like we did before. We chose everyone from the Midwest. That's where we get our 219 out of everyone who answered the survey. That was 2,099. Now this number, 1,076, I took the total of everyone who said controlling illegal immigration is very important, and then I subtracted these 129 people because I'd already counted them in that 219. I could have also just added up this one, and this one, and you get 1076. And then, of course, I converted it into a percent because that fraction doesn't mean very much to me. On the next one, I was only looking at people from the Northeast. So that would just be this group. And I wanted to know from the Northeast what was the likelihood that someone said controlling illegal immigration is not important at all. So that would be 33 out of everyone from the Northeast, 722. And then I rounded my decimal. And lastly, what people are most likely to say is that it's very important. So I looked over here at these totals. This number is much larger than these two. So 1205 out of 2099 gives me 57%. So that people are most likely to say it is very important. Now for these two, I found them just the way I was doing on the front. So the chance of rolling a 4 and then a 6 is 1 out of 36, which is 2.8%. And the chance of picking out a heart and then picking out another heart without replacement gives me a 5.9% chance, so that's actually more likely than rolling a 4 and then a 6. And same thing with this bottom one, the chance it won't snow. If that's the chance it will, the chance it won't is 87.5%, and rolling a 5 is just 1 over 6, that's 16.6%. Obviously, this one's much higher, so it's much more likely to happen.